Welcome to this explainer. Let's jump right in because today we're diving into a really fascinating perspective on our daily lives. We're going to explore some incredibly thought-provoking ideas from Hillary Cottom's book, The Work We Need, alongside some brilliant reflections on architectural evolution from 3G Office. If you've been sitting there feeling like the modern workplace is just kind of broken, or you're eager to see how we can profoundly rethink our relationship with work and the physical spaces we use to do it, you are in exactly the right place. So, let's get into it.
We spend so much time debating the exact same tiring topics, don't we? Think about your own workplace for a second. We argue relentlessly about whether remote work mandates should be 2 days or 3, or we totally panic about artificial intelligence taking all our jobs. But if we take a step back and actually listen to people, nurses, teachers, delivery riders, entrepreneurs, a much more fundamental question emerges. What kind of work do we actually need in order to live well? It sounds like a subtle shift, but actually, scratch that, it completely rewrites the starting point. When we ask about the future of work, we usually look straight at technology. But when we ask about the work we need, we absolutely have to start with people.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing how the actual design of our physical workspaces has evolved over time. For the longest time, the goal was incredibly simple. Just build better offices. Make them look a bit nicer. Then we moved to activity-based working, where we tried to match specific spaces to specific tasks. More recently, we evolved to context-based working. But the leap we absolutely need to make today, the future, is opportunity-based working. We aren't just designing a desk for a task anymore, we're designing environments based on the opportunities they can generate.
To truly grasp what opportunity-based working means, we have to ask ourselves this core question. What do we want to become possible when certain people come together, right? Because it's no longer about just finishing an isolated task. Digital tools and AI already allow us to do that transactional stuff from literally anywhere. The real magic of coming together in a physical space is generating learning, fostering a deep sense of belonging, and sparking those totally unexpected collaborations that simply do not happen when you're working alone in your living room.
Okay, let's dive into this. To figure out what people actually want, Hillary Cottom ran these unique gatherings she called imaginings. She didn't just ask HR experts, she asked everyday people to imagine how they actually wanted to live and work. She literally had them draw their lives and prioritize what truly mattered to them. And from these diverse sessions, 6 core themes kept emerging. The basics, meaning, care and repair, time, play, and place. Let's quickly break down how each of these powerful ideas is going to reshape our physical and organizational worlds.
Theme number 1 is the basics. And honestly, this surprised me a bit. Before we can even talk about grand purpose, work just has to make a decent life possible. We're talking about economic security, physical protection, and yes, highly functional workspaces with good lighting, air quality, and ergonomics. But here is the critical shift to understand. Providing a technically perfect healthy office is no longer the final goal. It's the absolute minimum requirement. It's just the starting point. If we secure the basics and just stop there, nobody is going to have a sufficiently strong reason to actually commute and go in. Next up is meaning. This is all about reconnecting the head, hands, and heart. You see, industrialization separated these elements. Some people thought while others executed. Well, we have to be incredibly careful not to let AI fragment modern knowledge work in that exact same way, turning us into assembly line workers just staring at screens. Instead, our shared corporate spaces must specialize in what is really hard to reproduce alone, building trust, resolving conflict, and transmitting culture. The office needs to transition from the place where we just do work to the place where we build the organization. The third theme is care and repair. Look, people aren't just employees who leave their lives at the door. They're parents, friends, and citizens. Taking care of the crew doesn't mean tossing them a wellness app while still demanding midnight emails, right? It begins with how the work itself is fundamentally designed. And what's super interesting is how this directly connects to our architecture. True sustainability or repair means we should adapt and reuse our existing buildings instead of always defaulting to building brand new ones. Caring for people and caring for our planet's physical architecture, they're part of the exact same system.
Then we have play. And just to be clear, this doesn't mean installing a dusty ping pong table in the break room and forcing everyone to use it. Play means entering an activity without fully knowing the outcome. It's exploring, it's experimenting, and yes, it's failing. To support this, architecture shouldn't be so rigid. We need what are called collision spaces, staircases, cafes, courtyards, where unexpected encounters happen naturally, rather than just predictable collaboration zones. But here is the catch. While architecture can create these adaptable spaces for serendipity, it's a company's culture that must ultimately grant the permission to experiment. Architecture creates possibility, but culture grants permission.
And that brings us to place. For years, globalization made us think we could build the exact same glass corporate boxes everywhere, totally ignoring the local context. But buildings are not isolated objects. The future involves designing true ecosystems for life. Imagine a corporate campus that isn't walled off, but naturally connects with local neighborhoods, coffee shops, startups, and universities. The building stops being this standalone container and becomes a vital, beating node in a much larger local human ecosystem.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next thought-provoking theme: time. The ancient Greeks actually had two distinct words for time. First, there's chronos, which is measurable ticking clock time, like your standard 8-hour, 5-day workday. And then there's kairos, which is lived experience time. Think of that amazing 2-hour conversation where you completely lost track of the clock. Now, real estate has been completely obsessed with chronos, celebrating when a building hits 90% occupancy. But if everyone in that building is just sitting there isolated, wearing noise-canceling headphones, we are entirely missing the point. We need to design for kairos, increasing the value of shared moments, not just blindly tracking physical presence. To actually achieve this, we need to completely shift our mindset regarding who we are designing for. The industrial era designed workspaces for Homo economicus, the supposedly rational individual driven purely by money, competition, and efficiency. One person, one desk, one screen, 8 hours. But we are sapiens integra, whole, complex human beings. Yes, we need money, but you and I also desperately need connection, meaning, autonomy, and nature. If we stop designing for isolated economic machines and start designing for the whole human, the physical spaces we create will look radically different. Of course, getting to this future requires massive change. But we really have to distinguish between transformation and transition. Implementing new working models or aggressively rolling out AI across a company, that's transformation. But transition is the careful, intentionally designed process of helping people through that change. The source material offers a really powerful warning here. Transformation without transition creates trauma. Workers shouldn't just be the passive recipients of this change, they must actively help design the organizations they want to become.
Which brings me to a quote from management legend Peter Drucker that honestly stopped me in my tracks. When executives would complain to him about having dead wood or unproductive employees in their organizations, Drucker's response was incredibly sharp. He asked, "Were they already dead when you hired them, or did they die working for you?" Wow. It's a tough question, isn't it? It challenges us to look in the mirror and ask whether our current organizations, our cultures, and our rigid spaces are actually suffocating our own talent. The antidote to that dead wood problem is realizing a fundamental truth. Talent isn't just found in the ground like oil. Talent is grown, and this gives the physical workplace an incredibly powerful new purpose. The old study, then work, then retire model, it's disappearing. We have to constantly learn and reinvent ourselves. Therefore, one of the absolutely strongest reasons to meet physically moving forward is for mentoring, intergenerational exchange, informal learning, and actively developing people. The office of the future must act as a school.
Now, for years, the real estate industry's mantra has been that an empty space is the most expensive and least sustainable space possible. And that is absolutely true. But there's a massive caveat today. A full space without purpose isn't a success either. If your office is packed but everyone is miserable and isolated, you haven't won. We need to stop simply measuring density and cost per square meter and fundamentally redefine the return on investment for the spaces we occupy.
So the crucial point is this. The new organizational ROI doesn't just measure real estate costs. It measures what every single square meter actually produces. Is that square meter producing learning? Is it fostering relationships and a real sense of belonging? Is it driving innovation and activity? Because great experiences in a space generate relationships. Those relationships build a community, and that community is what ultimately drives true, lasting business value. The ROI of the workplace is no longer about real estate, it's about organizational success.
Ultimately, we need to stop asking if people have to be in the office 2 or 3 days a week. It is just way too small a question for the massive transformation ahead of us. The real question, the one we should all be asking right now, is this. What has to happen for someone to get home and think it was undeniably worth going in today? When we can answer that, when we create spaces where people actually want to be because the experience is just that good, then we will have finally built the work and the places that we all truly need. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.